The Coming of Arthur. Leodorgran, the king of Cameliard, had one fair daughter, and none other child, and she was the fairest of all flesh on earth, Guinevere, and in her is one delight. That's just my stomach, please excuse it. For many a petty king, ere Arthur came, ruled in this isle, and ever waging war, and the hunger will be subsided soon. So each upon other wasted all the land, and still from time to time the heathen host swarmed overseas and harried what was left. And so there grew great tracts of wilderness, wherein the beast was ever more and more, but man was less and less till Arthur came. For first Aurelius lived and fought and died, and after him King Uther fought and died. But either failed to make the kingdom one, and after these King Arthur for a space, and through the puissance of his table round, drew all their petty princedoms under him, and their king and head made a realm and reigned. And thus the land of Cameliard was waste, thick with wet woods, and many a beast therein, and none are few to scare or chase the beast. So that wild dog and wolf and boar and bear came night and day, rooted in the fields, and wallowed in the gardens of the king, and ever and anon the wolf would steal the children and devour, but now and then her own brood, lost or dead, lent her fierce teat to human sucklings, and the children, housed in her foul den, there at their meat would growl and mock their foster mother on 4 feet, till straitened they grew up to wolf-like men, worse than the wolves. And King Leodogran groaned for the Roman legions here and again, and Czar's eagle, then his brother king Urien assailed him, last a heathen horde, reddening the sun with smoke and earth with blood, and on the spike that split the mother's heart, spitting the child, brake on him, till amazed he knew not whither he should turn for aid. But, for he heard of Arthur newly crowned, though not without an uproar made by those who cried, "He is not Uther's son." The king sent to him, saying, "Arise, and help us thou. For here between the man and beast we die." And Arthur yet had done no deed of arms, but heard the call and came, and Guinevere stood by the castle walls to watch him pass. But since he neither wore on helm or shield the golden symbol of his knightlyhood, but rode a simple knight among his knights, and many of these in richer arms than he, she saw him not, or marked not, if she saw, one among many, though his face was bare. But Arthur, looking downward as he passed, felt the light of her eyes into his life. Smite on the sudden, yet rode on, and pitched his tents beside the forest. Then he drave the heathen, after slew the beast, and felled the forest, letting in the sun, and made broad pathways for the hunter and the knight, and so returned. For while he lingered there, a doubt that ever smoldered in hearts of those great lords and barons of his realm flashed forth and into war. For most of these, colleaguing with a score of petty kings, made head against him, crying, "Who is he, that he should rule us? Who hath proven him King Uther's son, for lo, we look at him, and find nor face, nor bearing, limbs nor voice, are like to those of Uther, whom we knew. This is the son of Gorlos, not the king. This is the son of Anton, not the king. And Arthur, passing thence to battle, felt travail, and throes and agonies of the life, desiring to be joined with Guinevere, and thinking as he rode, her father said, that there between the man and beast they die, shall I not lift her from this land of beasts up to my throne, and side by side with me? What happiness to reign a lonely king, vexed, O ye stars that shudder over me, O earth that soundest hollow under me, vexed with waste dreams, for saving I be joined to her that is the fairest under heaven. I seem as nothing in the mighty world, and cannot will my will, nor work my work wholly, nor make myself in mine own realm victor and lord. But were I joined with her, then might we live together as one life, and reigning with one will in everything, have power on this dark land to lighten it, and power on this dead world to make it live. And let's remember to not curse the material existence itself. Whether negative or positive, it's a means for our purpose. It's our true purpose, not what we will our purpose to be entirely. Unless we will in accordance with God's will, that we surrender our will. Thereafter, as he speaks who tells the tale, when Arthur reached a field of battle bright, with pitched pavilions of his foe, the world was all so clear about him, that he saw the smallest rock far on the faintest hill, and even in high day the morning star. So when the king had set his banner broad, at once from either side with trumpet blast and shouts and clarions shrilling unto blood, the long-lanced battle let their horses run, and now the barons and the kings prevailed. And now the king, as here and there that war went swaying, but the powers who walked the world made lightnings and great thunders over him, and dazed all eyes, till Arthur, by main might, and mightier of his hands with every blow, and leading all his knighthood through the kings, Cardus, Urien, Credemont of Wales, Claudius, and Clarence of Northumberland, the king Brandagoras of Latangor, with Anguisant of Erin, Morganor, and Lot of Orkney. Then, before a voice as dreadful as the shout of one who sees, to one who sins and deems himself alone, and all the world asleep, they swerved and brake, flying, and Arthur called to stay the brands that hacked among the flyers. Ho, they yield. So, like a painted battle, the war stood, silenced, the living quiet as the dead. And in the heart of Arthur joy was lord. He laughed upon his warrior whom he loved, and honored most. Thou dost not doubt me, king, so well thine arm hath wrought for me today. Sir and my liege, he cried, the fire of God descends upon thee in the battlefield. I know thee for my king. Whereat the two, for each had warded either in the fight, swear on the field of death a deathless love. And Arthur said, man's word is God and man. Let chance what will, I trust thee to the death. And quickly from the foughten field he sent Ulfius and Brastius and Bedivere, his new-made knights, to King Leodogran, saying, if I in aught have served thee well, give me thy daughter Guinevere to wife, whom when he heard Leodogran in heart debating, how should I that am a king, however much he helped me at my need, give my one daughter saving to a king? And a king's son lifted his voice, and called a hoary man his chamberlain, to whom he trusted all things, and of him required his counsel. Knowest thou aught of Arthur's birth? Well, meritocracy over hereditary, thank you very much. Then spake the hoary chamberlain, and said, Sir King, there be but 2 old men that know, and each is twice as old as I, and one is Merlin, the wise man that ever served King Uther through his magic art, and one is Merlin's master, so they call him Blaise, who taught him magic, but the scholar ran before the master, and so far that Blaise laid magic by, and set him down, and wrote all things, and whatever Merlin did in one great annal book, where after years will learn the secret of our Arthur's birth. To whom King Leodogran replied, O friend, I have been helpen half as well by this King Arthur as by thee today. Then beast and man had their share of me, but summon here before us yet once more Ulfius and Brastias and Bedivere. Then when they came before him, the king said, I have seen the cuckoo chased by lesser fowl, and reason in the chase. But wherefore now do these your lords stir up the heat of war? Some calling Arthur, born of Gorlos, others of Anton. Tell me, ye yourselves, hold ye this Arthur for King Uther's son? And Ulfius and Brastias answered, Ay. Then Bedivere, the first of all his knights, knighted by Arthur at his crowning, spake for bold in heart, and acted. An act and word was he, whenever slander breathed against the king. Sir, there be many rumors on this head, for there be those who hate him in their hearts, call him base-born, and since his ways are sweet, and theirs are bestial, hold him less than man. And there be those who deem him more than man, and dream he dropped from heaven. But my belief in all this matter, so ye care to learn, sir, for ye know that in King Uther's time, the prince and warrior Gorlos, he that held Tintagil castle by the Cornish sea, was wedded with a winsome wife, Ygarni, and daughters had she borne him, one whereof Lot's wife, the queen of Orkney, Belicent, hath ever like a loyal sister cleaved to Arthur, but a son she had not borne. And Uther cast upon her eyes of love, but she a stainless wife to Gorlos, so loathed the bright dishonour of his love, that Gorlos and King Uther went to war, and overthrown was Gorlos and slain. Then Uther in his wrath and heat besieged Ygarni within Tintagil, where her men, seeing the mighty swarm about their walls, left her and fled, and Uther entered in, and there was none to call to but himself. So compassed by the power of the king enforced was she to wed him in her tears. And with a shameful swiftness, afterward, not many moons, King Uther died himself, moaning and wailing for an heir to rule after him, lest the realm should go to wrack. And that same night, the night of the new year, by reason of the bitterness and grief that vexed his mother, all before his time, was Arthur born, and all soon as born, delivered at a secret postern gate, to Merlin to be holden far apart, until his hour should come, because the lords of that fierce day were as the lords of this, wild beasts, and surely would have torn the child, piecemeal among them, had they known, for each but sought to rule for his own self in hand. And many hated Uther for the sake of Gorlas, wherefore Merlin took the child, and gave him to Sir Anton, an old knight, an ancient friend of Uther, and his wife nursed the young prince and reared him with her own, and no man knew. And ever since the lords have foughten like wild beasts among themselves, so that the realm has gone to wrack. But now, this year, when Merlin, for his hour had come, brought Arthur forth, and set him in the hall, proclaiming, Here is Uther's heir, your king. 100 voices cried, Away with him! No king of ours, a son of Gorlas he, or else the child of Anton, and no king, or else base-born. Yet Merlin, through his craft, and while the people clamored for a king, had Arthur crowned, but after the great lords banned, and so break out in open war. And when the king debated with himself, if Arthur were the child of shamefulness, or born the son of Gorlas after death, are Uther's son, and born before his time, or whether there were truth in anything said by these three, there came to Cameliard with Gawain and young Modred, her 2 sons, Lot's wife, the queen of Orkney, Bellicent, whom, as he could, not as he would, the king made feast for, saying, as they sat at meat, A doubtful throne is ice on summer seas. Ye come from Arthur's court, victor his men, report him, yea, but ye think this king, so many of those that hate him and so strong, so few his knights, however brave they be, hath body and now to hold his foemen down. O king, she cried, and I will tell thee few, but all brave, all of one mind with him, for I was near him when the savage yells of Uther's peerage died, and Arthur sat crowned on the dass, and his warriors cried, Be thou the king, and we will work thy will, who love thee. Then the king, in low, deep tones, and simple words of great authority, bound them by so strait vows to his own self, that when they rose, knighted from kneeling, some were pale, as at the passing of a ghost, some flushed, the others dazed, as one who wakes half-blinded at the coming of a light. But when he spake and cheered his table round with large, divine, and comfortable words, beyond my tongue to tell thee I beheld, from eye to eye, through all their order flash, a momentary likeness of the king, and ere it left their faces, through the cross, and those around it, and the crucified, down from the casement over Arthur, smote, flame-colored, burnt and azure, in 3 ways, one falling upon each of the 3 fair queens, who stood in silence near his throne, the friends of Arthur gazing on him, tall, with bright, sweet faces. Who will help him at his need? And there I saw Mage Merlin, whose vast wit and 100 winters are but as the hands of loyal vassals, toiling for their liege, and near him stood the Lady of the Lake, who knows a subtler magic than his own, clothed in white samite. Mystic, wonderful, she gave the king his huge cross-hilted sword, whereby to drive the heathen out, A mist of incense circled about her. At her face well nigh was hidden in the minister gloom. But there was heard among the holy hymns a voice as of the waters, for she dwells down in a deep calm whatsoever storms may shake the world, and when the surface rolls, hath power to walk the waters like our Lord. Well, obviously they're Christianizing the story, which, was already done before Tennyson, but heathen and pagan aren't types of religion. They're types of housing, but that's really it. And crosses and all that other stuff, it's like, come on. Other faiths had it, so. There, likewise, I beheld Excalibur. Before him, at his crowning borne, the sword that rose from out the bosom of the lake. And Arthur rode across and took it rich, with jewels, elfin Urim, on the hilt, bewildering heart and eye, the blade so bright that men are blinded by it, on one side, graven in the oldest tongue of all this world, take me, but turn the blade, and ye shall see, and written in the speech ye speak yourself, cast me away. And sad was Arthur's face, taking it, but old Merlin counselled him, take thou and strike, the time to cast away is yet far off. So this great brand the king took, and by this will beat his foeman down. Thereat Leodogran rejoiced, and thought to sift his doubtings to the last, and asked, fixing his full eyes of question on her face, the swallow and the swift are near akin, but thou art closer to this noble prince, being his own dear sister. And she said, daughter of Gorlas and Ingerne am I, and therefore Arthur's sister, asked the king. She answered, these be secret things, and signed to those two sons to pass, and let them be. And Gawain went, and breaking into song, sprang out, and followed by his flying hair, ran like a colt, and leapt at all he saw. But Modred laid his ear beside the doors, and there half heard the same that afterwards struck the throne and striking found his doom. And then the queen made answer, what know I? For dark my mother was in eyes and hair, and dark in hair and eyes am I. And dark was Gorlas, yea, and dark was Uther too, well nigh to blackness, but this king is fair beyond the race of Britons and of men. Moreover, always in my mind I hear a cry from out the dawning of my life, a mother weeping, and I heard her say, oh, that ye had some brother, pretty one, to guard thee on the rough ways of the world. Ay, said the king, and hear ye such a cry. But when did Arthur chance upon thee first? O king, she cried, and I will tell thee true, he found me first, when yet a little maid. Beaten I had been for a little fault, whereof I was not guilty, and out I ran and flung myself down on a bank of heath, and hated this fair world and all therein, and wept and wished that I were dead. And he, I know not whether of himself he came, or brought by Merlin, who, they say, can walk unseen at pleasure. He was at my side, and spake sweet words, and comforted my heart, and dried my tears, being a child with me. And many a time he came, and evermore, as I grew greater, grew with me. And sad at times he seemed, and sad with him was I. Stern too at times, and then I loved him not. but sweet again, and then I loved him well. And now, of late, I see him less and less, but those first days had golden hours for me. For then I surely thought he would be king. But let me tell thee now another tale, for Blighs, our Merlin's master, as they say, died but of late, and sent his cry to me to hear him speak before he left his life. Shrunk like a fairy changeling lay the mage, and when I entered told me that himself and Merlin ever served about the king. Uther before he died, and on the night when Uther and Tintagel passed away, moaning and wailing for an air, the two left the still king, and passing forth to breathe. Then from the castle gateway, by the chasm, descending down through the dismal night, a night in which the bounds of heaven and earth were lost, beheld so high upon the dreary deeps, a dragon wing. It seemed in heaven a ship, the shape thereof, a dragon winged, and all from stern to stern, bright with the shining people on the decks, and gone as soon as seen. And then the two dropped to the cove, and watched the great sea fall, wave after wave, each mightier than the last, till last a ninth one, gathering half the deep, and full of voices, slowly rose and plunged, roaring, and all the wave was in a flame, and down the wave and in the flame was born a naked babe, and rode to Merlin's feet, who stooped and caught the babe, and cried, "The king, here is an heir for Uther." And the fringe of that great breaker, sweeping up the strand, lashed at the wizard as he spake the word, and all at once all around him rose in fire, so that the child and he were clothed in fire, and presently thereafter followed calm, free sky and stars, and this the same child, he said, is he who reigns. Nor could I part in peace till this were told, and saying this, the seer went through the strait and dreadful pass of death, not ever to be questioned any more, save on the further side, when I met Merlin and asked him if these things were truth.